Welcome back to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where everyday people share the quotes that have shaped their lives, inviting us all to reflect and connect. Today, we're joined by Steven Eisenberg, an author whose work spans the intriguing realms of AI, ethics, and even pirate adventures. With a rich background as a biology and chemistry instructor, Steven brings a thoughtful perspective on the future of humanity and machines we create. Let's dive into Steven's journey and discover the wisdom that has inspired him along the way. Can you share the quotes you
Something that I've lived by much of my life is a quote by the author Edith Hamilton. She liked to read about Greek history, and she liked to talk about Greek civilization. And a quote I've always remembered from her books is, "Civilization, a much abused word, stands for a high matter quite apart from telephones and electric lights. It is a matter of imponderables, of delight in the things of the mind, of love of beauty, of honor, grace, courtesy, and delicate feeling." So I've always been the type to not be materialistic, and I've always valued um, the intellect and being cultured and being informed and educated and valuing intangibles. That has always been
How did you
most
first
important to
come
me.
across this?
I had gotten one of Edith Hamilton's books probably decades ago, and it was called The Greek Way, and that's where I came across that quote.
Okay. Why do you think this quote resonated deeply with you?
Because I have always felt that there are more important things in life than the material. And I've always felt that the word civilization was not the correct word for modern societies. What makes us civilized is not our technology. It's not our electric lights. It's not our computers. It's not what we possess. What makes us civilized is how we behave and what our values are. So if we have values like compassion, empathy, and we value the intangible, things like what makes a better society, valuing the world around us, valuing the quality of our society, valuing the quality of our own lives over the material, things we can feel and see and our property. That has been why that particular point of view has
Could you
resonated with me.
can you share a specific moment or moments in your life where this quote or this philosophy made a real difference, where it kind of played itself in your life?
I would say that I've always been a scientist. My background is in science. I've got degrees in biology and chemistry. So I've always preferred to pursue my intellectual interests rather than monetary gain. Even though, money is important, I still want to I'm still interested in having a business as an inventor, and pursuing my ideas. Money has not always been the most important thing to me. Pursuing my intellectual interests have been the most important. And so this has influenced the direction in my life.
Was there a time when sticking to this belief of valuing the intangible over the tangible was kind of difficult?
Well, certainly it's affected my career success. Yeah, I could have had more money. I could have had better quality of life if I'd gone into something more remunerative, but that was not my primary goal in life. And so it's affected, I still have interest in being in business because I'm an inventor and I would love to be able to pursue my ideas, but my focus has always been on more intellectual pursuits.
Huh? Okay. When most people hear these quotes, they sometimes might be subject to misinterpretation. What would you say it's a common misunderstanding people might have about this idea you've just shared with us?
Well, I would say it's the common way that the word civilization is used. And like I said, when we see modern societies or the idea when humans started to develop agriculture and started to living together in towns and cities, then we start describing them as civilized. However, I've never felt that that was a good definition of what it means to be civilized. Or to me, I would say that that's the beginning of civilization. To me, civilization implies that people are civilized. And just because you have technology or humans have live together in towns and cities, tribes, nations, it doesn't mean that you're civilized. And so I think the misconception has been deciding that a civilization means civilized people. And I don't like the way that the word civilization implies that people are civilized, because it's not necessarily so. They don't necessarily go together.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the secular meaning of civilization is quite different from what the real meaning of civilization means.
Well, to me, yeah. To me, civilization implies civilized people. People who are not warlike, they're not aggressive, they're not violent. There's compassion, empathy. They value learning and compassion and helping others. To me, a civilization requires people to be civilized. And to me, I think it's common to equate the word civilization with being civilized, and I don't agree with associating them like
Okay.
that.
What would you, now this is a follow-up question now. What would someone who has an opposing idea of this, what would they say? And how would you respond to that?
Well, that's the way I would argue it. Just because people, the modern world, I would say, I don't think use of the word civilization is an accurate expression. We are not necessarily civilized, even though we can be described as a civilization. We talk about a country or a people, a society as being a civilization, or the modern world as being a civilization, or ancient peoples who lived in cities and city-states as being civilizations. And I would argue that just because just because we describe people like that as civilizations, as living in civilizations, doesn't mean they're civilized. So I think using the word civilization to describe modern humans is not necessarily the best term to use.
I mean, that confusion kind of stemmed up when I saw the quotes. It took me some time. I had to like read it like twice and like, okay, this is not, that's not what it meant. Oh, he's talking about this. Because when I saw civilization, I was like, what does civilization have to do about a guiding philosophy? And then I had to like, read in between the lines to say, oh, so this is not the kind of civilization he's talking about.
Yeah, that's why I have always liked that quote. I don't think the word civilized is used properly in describing modern humans. Just because we have technology, just because we live in houses, we live in this particular modern society, doesn't mean that we are civilized.
Yeah. Now, I'd love for us to do something really, really interesting, and I'll explain it, and you tell me if you are down to do. You've talked about this quote for Edith Hampton, right? And it's a very interesting quote, right? Now, I would love for you to put it in your own words and like say, like, if you were to say it like in your own words, how would you say it? Like, and you could take your time.
Well,
you don't have to like Okay, I know it's the kind of question that requires you to like process and articulate your thoughts, so you can take your time.
Well, yeah, it doesn't simply mean we have technology. It doesn't simply mean we are organized into societies and we live in towns and cities and countries. To be civilized is to have a certain set of values and ideal. It doesn't simply imply having technological advancements or technology or living together in structural society.
I'm going to turn the heat a bit higher. Can you give us a quote of this idea without using the word civilized?
I have to think about that.
Yeah.
Well, we have values. Civilized people are not warlike, and there's not aggression, there's not violence, there's not war, there's not oppression, there's not repression. To be truly civilized means to show compassion and empathy, to respect other people, to have integrity, to be peaceful, to respect freedom and individual rights, to be generous and altruistic, to have a love of learning, to value things greater than ourselves, to put the greater good above one's own needs, such as the quality of the world around us, the quality of the planet, the quality of our societies, and the quality of our communities. So those are more civilized values. Being civilized, being a civilization should, to me, imply that you possess these values that are what are central to what it means to be civilized.
Okay. Has there ever been a time when you kind of like, you ignored this idea, right? Kind of like we all have values, philosophies, and ideas, but sometimes we do things contrary to it. We kind of like make mistakes. Has there ever been a time when you strayed away from this guiding philosophy?
No, I guess we all have our sides. We have our materialistic sides. We have our selfish sides. I'm no different. Would put my own personal needs and my material needs first. I wouldn't say there's any time where I really strayed too far from these values, but of course, I don't live purely by this idea that we should be non-materialistic. To me, our material possessions are important, but they're secondary. They're not the most important things in the world.
Okay. Then the other priority, the intangible comes first, then the tangibles comes next.
Right.
I mean, what you're saying is that you're not part of those people that denies that, oh, the stuff is not on the list. Like, it's on the list, but it's just not number one.
Right. A civilized person's priority should be the greater good, the good of our planet, the good of our world, our communities, our countries, and intangible values, pursuit of the intellect, pursuit of improving oneself. So, for example, we have jobs, careers, we make money for monetary and material gain. We work for ourselves. We work for tangible gain. But what we ideally should work for is the betterment of ourselves. A civilized person works for the betterment of themselves and the betterment of the world around them.
Because when we become better, then we can even offer more value to the world and to the people around us.
Yeah, well, that should be the first priority. Now, our quality of life is influenced by many things, but we need material possessions. We need comforts. We need a home, but those should be of secondary concern. Improving ourselves and working to improve the world around us should be of primary concern.
Yeah. Can you give us, because the couple of questions I want to ask, how this philosophy has applied to your professional life? Could you give us a short intro of what you do? And
you could say I have a variety of jobs. I am an educational consultant as well as an author. I used to be a college instructor. I've taught biology and chemistry for about 30 years. Right now, I run a couple of educational consulting organizations. One is called Bridge to America Culture and Educational Consulting, and the other is the Princeton Academy of Language and Science. So that's what I'm doing right now. I run these businesses and I write.
What kind of writing do you do?
I write on the topic of the influence of artificial intelligence on society. And that's where my most recently published book is about.
What's the name?
And I also...
What's the name of the book?
It's called Can You Rape a Robot? Morality, Rights, and the Rise of Conscious Machines. I also write science fiction and pirate adventures. So I've recently completed a pirate story called The Secret of the Dragon's Scale, and I'm working on getting that published.
Thank you so much for sharing your philosophy with us on the podcast today. The couple of questions I'm going to ask is, do you have like a daily or weekly routine that helps you put these quotes front and center? Because in this distraction filled world, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. How do you keep reminding yourself of this quote, of this philosophy?
It influences my writing. It's influenced this book, Can You Rape a Robot? And it's influencing the science fiction stories that I'm working on now. The Can You Rape a Robot book talks about how artificial intelligence is going to affect us in the near future. So basically, it focuses on the concept of robot rights. What will happen when machines are capable of consciousness, human-like intelligence, and then become conscious? What are our moral obligations to them? Will they be deserving the same rights as humans? And so it's connected to my views of how society should function in the future. what are our moral obligations going to be to other beings? The science fiction story I'm working on right now is called The Harvest of the Androids. And it focuses on, again, it's a fictional story, but it takes place in the near future. And it's about how society will function once machines take over most of human labor. What kind of society will be left? How do we want that society to be? What will be its values? So this idea I like to live by influences my writing.
Okay.
And that's how it basically is always on my mind because of that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting thing because you're always writing, so it's kind of flows into it reminds me of Marcus Aurelius. They will always kind of like journal. I know, of course, the writing you do is not journaling, but the fact that you always so writing is thinking in a way, because when you sit to write, you collect your thoughts, you imagine, you construct, you create, and oftentimes you get to reflect and look at the materials usually, which is most of the times your philosophies, your ideas, your values, your stories, and all that.
All your ideas, a lot of your personality goes into a story. Your
Yeah.
views, your philosophy, my vision for the future goes into my writing. So a lot of these worldviews that I possess influence what I write about.
Yeah. If you had to two more questions, and then we'll round up the episode. If you had to condense the power of these quotes, right? If you had to press it down, right? Because it's the quotes, it's a very important quote, but it's a kind of long quote. What would, if you had to condense the quote into a powerful one sentence, what would it be? One sentence.
So I would say that the most important things in life are the intangibles, quality of our communities, the quality of the world we live in, and the quality of our own person. So we should seek to create a harmonious world, a compassionate world, and we should always strive to improve ourselves. We should work to better ourselves first, and our material quality of lives comes second.
Thank you so much for that. What's one small action our listeners can take today to apply this idea to their life?
I would say don't obsess. Don't focus on your. Okay. Well, let's say you should keep in mind the quality of our lives is not primarily dependent on the quality and quantity of our possession. The quality of our lives is primarily dependent on improving the quality of our world around us and of improving ourselves. So people should keep that in mind.
Well,
and if more people did, I think we'd have a better world.
So what you just said is that there are other things that are more important than silver and gold.
Yeah, there are more important things than our possessions.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can listeners, you mentioned about your book and some of the things you're onto. Where can listeners learn more and kind of like catch up and see what you're doing?
Well, okay, you can go to my website, Steven Eisenberg Author. You can go to my Facebook page, which is at Facebook, Steven Eisenberg Author. And you can check out my book on Amazon. Again, the title is Can You Rape a Robot? Morality, Rights, and the Rise of Conscious Machines.
Yeah. Thank you so much once again, Steven. I'm really excited and I did learn a lot. And thank you so much for sharing your stories and your philosophy.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Reducible Wisdom. If you found something meaningful in this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you're listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every little bit keeps the conversations going. I'm your host, Wisdom Contour, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep growing.